review of what's happened at the gallery in the past, and then Steve will talk a little bit about what we've got going on as our feasibility study. And everybody, if you would like some more food, you're certainly welcome to it. Help yourself. And that's one thing I wanted to note too, is all the food was catered by Steve Alstead. And a lot of you, I think, know Steve, but he just does an amazing job. We've had several of these meetings, and at each meeting he's had something a little different, but it's all been fantastic. So help yourself to more if you're so inclined. So the image that you're seeing up on the screen right now is, on the left, is kind of an early rendition of the gallery. And it kind of shows the layout in the lower left-hand corner. It's kind of hard to see probably from your angle to make it out. And then the picture in the upper right is a drone image that Jim Turner, our own Jim Turner, took a few years ago of the gallery. And then in the lower right is kind of the proposed addition that we hope to construct this spring and into the summer. So, as I mentioned, the purpose of today's meeting is to provide information about the construction of the Art Storage Archives addition that will go kind of on the northwest side of the gallery, and also to introduce a capital campaign, which Steve will discuss in greater detail in just a moment. So this gallery, of course, is dedicated to Birger Sandzén, who was born in Sweden in 1871, came to America in 1894, and really spent the rest of his life here, was very dedicated to Bethany, taught at Bethany for over 50 years, taught until 1946, and then passed away in 54. And one of his dreams, even when he was teaching and very active, was to have a gallery built in this community. And we actually have an early drawing that he proposed, and this comes from a letter that was with some Carl Millis papers that kind of shows what his intention was. So it would have a main entrance kind of on the lower part, and 3 rooms that would be approximately 20 feet by 40 feet. And then at the left area, kind of a small hallway that would lead to the basement, and then have a little curator's office, and then the ever important restroom, toilet and washroom would be in the upper left. And I really never know for sure where he wanted this built, but I've always heard that he did own the lot where the Sjogren Center is now, just to the north of the Sandzén house. So I think that's probably where he kind of had in mind for a potential gallery. So unfortunately, it was never realized in his lifetime. But his son-in-law, daughter, and widow, shown in this picture, so Pelham and Margaret Greeno and Alfreda, decided to make something happen. So a little less than a year after he'd passed away, they established the Birger Sandzén Memorial Foundation, and with really the main purpose to build a gallery in Sandzén's honor. And so these are some kind of an early rendition of what they anticipated the gallery would look like. And Margaret was able to get one of her cousins to actually do most of the architectural design work for the building. So this is what they came up with. And you can see the main gallery part is pretty much the same. But then I think at one point they had the idea that they could also have a classroom area added on to that. And maybe that was going to be for the Bethany Art Department. I'm really not sure, but at some point that kind of got discontinued. But the groundbreaking did take place on August 29th, 1956. And you can see in the picture at the left, there's Pastor Danielson and Pelham Greeno, Bill Taylor, who was a treasurer at the time, Robert Mortved, who was Bethany's president, and then Alfreda and Margaret. So they were able to, after a little over a year after the foundation was established, they were able to break ground in this location. And so just a couple images of the early gallery construction. This is them constructing the basement area where we currently have our storage area, and a lot of the mechanical room is also down there. And just the girders that kind of hold up the floor. And then the scene in the lobby looking out east, so you can see Messiah Church in the distance. And then constructing the walls. And they really, honestly, really didn't spare much expense as far as the construction goes. The materials are very high quality materials. I think a lot of the walls are actually built up with tongue and groove 2x6s, so it's really pretty amazing. And then just kind of another shot of the gallery under construction before the windows were put in. And the area where the little Triton fountain would go. And I think Jim Turner mentions about coming over and playing in dirt piles back in the day. And then kind of the finished gallery. So pretty remarkable achievement, and I'm sure Sandzén would have been very proud, and probably, hopefully continues to be very proud. So the flag raising for the gallery occurred on Tuesday, October the 15th. And so you can see in the lower right, that's Pastor Stanley Swanson kind of leading the proceedings. And can anybody guess who is with Pellegrino in the upper left, or the left picture? Mybrit at the right. The other one's kind of tough. Dr. David Clark, yep, is the other student. So they were both the ceremonial flag raisers. So the actual dedication of the gallery took place on the next Sunday, and that would be October 20th, 1957. And then it opened to the public on November 12th, with their regular hours being Tuesday through Sunday from 1:15 to 5. And the picture on the right is the first sculpture exhibition in the lobby area. So you can see kind of a minimalist design, but very much, very interesting for the time. So the gallery's first director was Pellegrino, shown here in his office probably around 1960. And that office is still in the same, or the desk is still in the same office, so that's kind of cool. And then, sorry, the wording doesn't show up real great on this, but Pelham and Margaret Greeno were with co-director Carl Peterson. So Pelham worked as kind of the sole director for a number of years, but then in 1963, they hired Carl to serve as kind of a co-director and help out. And Carl served in that position until 1981, and then Larry Griffiths, who's shown at the right, took over as the co-director with Pelham. And then when Pelham passed away in 1983, Larry took over as the sole director. And then one of my favorite pictures of Pelham, with if you knew Pelham, he had a hearing deficiency, so he had a hearing aid that he kept in his pocket. So whenever he would talk on the phone, he'd have to have the phone upside down from what we normally would use it as. And a photo by Jim Turner. So the gallery has been very involved in the community over the years and continues to be so. This will just give you an idea of who our board of directors are. Jim Turner's our president, and then Karen Graham, vice president. Steve Rennick from Salina is our treasurer, and then Dave Samuelson, who just passed away, has been our secretary. And then you can see a variety of other board members. The college also has 3 mandated members on our board. And so we've always had a nice close relationship with Bethany College as well. And then you can kind of read through the staff. Our really active committees are the show committee, membership committee, Ann Samuelson has been the chamber music coordinator for a couple years. And then we've also developed a committee for the addition to kind of oversee a lot of the progress there. And then one of our most important groups, volunteers, are the docent class, who really do amazing things for the gallery. They give tours, they also kind of man the front desk on weekends, And then when we do things with the Soderstrom students, they're very involved with that as well. So we always appreciate all of their work. So just to give you an idea of some of the shows that have taken place here over the years, this is a show of paintings by Lester Raymer from 1959. And we've always been very, close with a lot of the Lindsborg artists. So this is Anton Pearson with one of his young fans back in 1960 approximately, probably Easter time. I love those little white gloves that she has on. And then, gee, let's see if we can figure out who these people are. So, Jim Turner tells me the person on the left is Bob McComb. I'll get that. I'm getting better. And then the center person just happens to be in our presence today, Mr. Dale Keller.
I won't stand.
Or as Larry Griffiths used to call him, Cookie Keller.
I ate a lot of cookies.
And anybody know who the person on the right is?
Bob Alstead.
Yep, Bob Alstead. So you guys did a lot of work in the gallery, I think, cleaning and floors are still immaculate from all the work that you did. And it always makes me nervous. I tell people, you're holding these Natzler pots. They were very famous potters, very delicate, and now, extremely valuable. That bowl that Bob's holding is probably $12,000 worth of ceramics. So throughout the years, the gallery's had a number of great exhibitions as well. This is a Native American collection that was brought in. Another one of my favorite photos, the 1977 Bethany Faculty Show, featured Gretchen Coles, Bruce Woods, crazy-haired Don Osborne, and then Ray Kmeyer. And so over the years, we've had over nearly 1,500 exhibitions. So it's really a remarkable legacy. And this is a student show. We called this Kansas Collegiate Aesthetics from, I think, probably the early 2000s. And it was a juried exhibition. Other things that have taken place in the gallery include, in 1996, retired Bethany professor Delmar Holman took over the role of being the gallery's archivist. So Margaret, when she passed away, had a lot of the family letters. I think there's over 12,000 letters. So Delmar actually sifted through all of those letters and got them organized by year, and really in a way that we're able to search them and really use it as a great resource. And so if a lot of you read gallery notes, a lot of the letters that I pull into gallery notes come from Delmar's work. And Carl Peterson was also instrumental. He took a lot of the photographs that the family had and organized them and wrote up little subjects about who they were, if he knew. And Norman Shugren did a lot of data entry for us. We have kind of a subject listing of all the letters in the archives. So it's really pretty remarkable what we have. And just to give you an idea of what's there, like those file cabinets on the right are filled primarily with the letters, which go from about 1860 up until Margaret passed away. And then there's Sandzén register books where he listed a lot of his paintings. Also writings that he did, articles about Sandzén, exhibitions he participated, and just a whole trove of different materials. So in '96, another advance for the gallery was Gus van der Hoeven from Manhattan, designed the landscape that we all experience outside. Did a really nice job with that, and that's continued we try to take care of that as best we can. And then in 1998, a vertical screen storage system was installed in the basement. So this is kind of just the framework of that storage system. And then these are the actual roller screens that a lot of the paintings are put on. And after we're done, after Steve gets done with his little presentation, we'll have the basement open if you want to come down and take a look down there, just to give you an idea of kind of what it looks like. So in 2011, 2012, we underwent a major renovation. So this is kind of the gallery when everything had been taken out. We shifted all the artwork and everything to one side while they worked on this side, and then did the reverse when they actually, then we shifted everything over here and they did the reverse on the other side of the gallery. So it was quite an undertaking. And you can see, here's where they peeled off the old monk's cloth. And actually, the monk's cloth had asbestos paper behind it, so they had to peel that out too. And that was quite an ordeal. Everything had to be blocked off, and it was quite the adventure. And so really our intent was to keep the integrity of the original building, but just insulate it, make it a little more sustainable. We also put in a geothermal heating and air conditioning system, redid a lot of the lights, made them much more energy efficient, and just kind of tried to spruce things up as best we could. And here's a couple workers probably working on getting the lighting ready to go. And just the mechanical system to me is overwhelming, just pipes going everywhere. And so after being closed for 9 months, we reopened in March of 2012 and have been going pretty strongly ever since. In 2016, the gallery acquired the bulk of the Bethany art collection. So that kind of leads us into where we've come to this problem where we're basically kind of out of room, out of space in the basement to store anything. We had one of our board members built some shelving that we were able to put a lot of the 2D works on from Bethany's collection. And then they also gave us this flat file system where a lot of the prints were stored. But we were certainly excited to be able to take that over and keep it for the community for the future. And then over the years, as you can imagine, the permanent collection has slowly grown and we're just out of space. This is a shot inside our curator's office area that used to be a gallery space, but now we've got paintings kind of leaning up against shelving, and you can also tell there's a whole bunch of books in the background as well. And this is a couple pictures from the basement storage area, just again, give you an idea of how cramped it's become, and you'll be able to experience that yourself if you go down there and check it out. And things leaning up against screens, so it's difficult to kind of move around too much in there. And then we have a small storage area for our three-dimensional pieces with a lot of shelving in it, and a lot of the pieces have kind of overrun the shelving. And just another shot from the other side of that room. So a lot of people think that we have primarily just Sandzén's work, but we have a whole litany of other artists as well. And this list, I certainly don't expect you to look through all those, but it just gives you an idea of all the different artists that are represented in this gallery. And there's actually a partial another page. So it really is pretty remarkable. So like in this photo, in the pictures, in the upper left is a pot by Ray Kmeyer. The upper right is a print by Helen West Heller, who is a Chicago artist that Sandzén had met and exhibited as a part of the Smoky Hill Art Club. And then in the lower left is a work by Rosemary Laughlin Basher, who taught here for a number of years. And then in the lower right is a self-portrait by Henry Varnum Poor, who was a Chapman, Kansas native and a fairly good friend of Sandzén's. So we've gotten to the point where really something has to be done. We just need to figure out, either we need to start throwing Sandzén paintings into the trash, or we need to put an addition on. So we chose the latter. So we contacted Harbin Construction, and they were very instrumental in doing most of the construction work on the renovation. We've had a good working relationship with them since then. They've been very supportive of the gallery. And so I had this idea that the building could just basically go on this side in the area, and maybe we could open a hole up in the corridor to enter into that building. However, after visiting with Brandon at Harbin, he suggested, well, maybe you can just use that window that's in the far northwest corner as the doorway, and we can build this kind of L-shaped addition on the gallery. And so if you see all those yellow circles to the right, those are where the geothermal wells are located. So even back when we were going through the renovation, we thought about, some kind of an addition. So that's why they were able to leave that kind of L shape there, just in case we would proceed with that at some point. So this is kind of what we've come up with after much discussion. You can see in the lower left what our current basement storage space is, approximately 1,550 square feet. The new addition will give us art storage of 1,735 square feet. It'll also have an archives and library kind of in the center that'll take up about 700 square feet. And then a receiving area of a little over 1,000 square feet where we could actually drive a vehicle in and unload it out of the elements, because that can be a little problematic when somebody delivers their work or we need to take work somewhere and it's raining out or snowing. It's a little difficult to time it just right. So we'll actually be able to drive a vehicle in and park it. And then another 540 square feet for just general storage, which nobody ever has enough of. So we have also talked to Harbin a little bit about potentially a basement, and so they're kind of working with us now to try to get some figures to figure out what kind of an estimated cost that would be. But this addition currently, as we foresee it, would add about 4,000 square feet. And the estimate that came in for that back in May of 2024 was $1,114,000 for the addition. And then the Bethany Presser Hall sewer line actually would run under that space. And it's been in bad shape for a number of years, so that would need to be replaced and rerouted around the addition. So the cost to do that would be $29,000. So one of our first things that we needed to do was get permission from Bethany. So we did meet with their board, and on October 30th, they gave us permission to proceed. So in thinking about how we were going to fund this, we really came up with three primary sources. So we'll have a capital campaign, of which hopefully all of you will be a part, and we hope to raise about $500,000 from that. Excuse me. We're hoping to apply for grants and get around $500,000 in grants, and you can see we've already applied for the David Nutt Legacy Grant. And then hopefully we can apply to the Dane G. Hansen Foundation, Barbara Osher, Pro Suesa Foundation, Maybe Foundation, of course Smoky Valley Community Foundation, and maybe others as they come about. And then you'll see we're going to have an art auction this Saturday, and you can see the works that will be deaccessioning from the collection on this wall and the back wall. And really what we decided to do with that is we do have Sandzéns very similar to this in the collection. So those will be part of the sale. And then the bulk of the other pieces, we also have a couple Ramers that are very similar to what you see, but a lot of the prints, we have duplicates in the collection. So those are the things that we'll be deaccessing in that auction this Saturday. So we're hoping for good weather. I know it's supposed to maybe do a little bit of snow showers. But if you're so inclined and looking for art for your house, come on by and enjoy the auction. We'll have some treats as well. So construction on this project is to begin fairly quickly. We're hoping that in May of 2025, it'll begin when Bethany lets out for their summer break. They are going to they're planning to replace the sewer line during Bethany's spring break, so that it'll then be in place hopefully for any commencement activities and graduation, also for the Messiah when it takes place in April. So we anticipate the building will take about 7 months to complete. So, by attending today, you'll be registered to win this Sandzén lithograph, Pine and Juniper, and we'll have a drawing held after the end of all of our meetings, probably in early March. And I also encourage you, there's some books over on the stand over there. You're welcome to take one of the Sandzén books as well. And major donors, and we're not sure how that'll all work out in detail yet, but you certainly will be recognized in either on the lobby plaques or somewhere else in the building. So just let me know if you have any questions. And just a reminder, at the conclusion, once Steve is done with his little talk, you're welcome to take a little tour of the storage area if you're so inclined. So can I answer any questions from anybody? All right, Steve, do you want to say a few things?
Thank you, Ron.
And if you can't hear Steve, we have a mic here, so just holler, raise your hand if you can't hear.
I use my teacher voice and project. I became acquainted with the Sandzén Gallery as a freshman at Bethany College in 1967. It was a cloudy, rainy November afternoon. I and a friend came into the gallery, started visiting with Carl Peterson, co-director. And as conversation progressed, he said, Gustafson. He said, you know, I lived part of my life northeast of McPherson near the Gustafson farm. And I used to ride horses with a guy by the name of Carl Gustafson. I said, well, that's my dad. And what that led to, he said, you know, Gladys makes waffles every Sunday night. So you're gonna come over and have waffles with us. And that became the beginning of a long friendship. Carl was at our wedding. We traveled together. He's baptismal sponsor for one of our children. And you know how dapper Carl dressed all the time. I've got a wonderful photo of him at my dad's farm in bib overalls. That's a little bit hard to imagine. Well, Carl, as I said, became a friend, and so did this piano sitting back here. Carl said, and I should probably back up a bit, I was studying piano and organ with Lambert Dalston. And Carl said, well, this piano just sits here. Why don't you come over here and practice in the mornings, and then we can have coffee together. And that was a good enticement because it was fika in the true Swedish sense. We got to know Margaret and Pelham, and two quick stories, and one Ron usually tells. He did share that Margaret Pelham and Alfreda Sandzén formed a foundation. But what he didn't tell you, and has shared with the other groups, is that Pelham gave the group a choice. Margaret could either build a new house or they could build the gallery, but not both. So they took a vote, and Pelham and Alfreda voted for the gallery. Margaret voted for the house. I think that's a great story. And I remember when I was in here talking with Pelham, one time he said, Steve, I chose so unwisely from my stock portfolio to build this gallery. He said, you know, I sold my Coca-Cola and my IBM stock. He said, I sure should have chosen something different than what I did. But thanks to the Greeno resources, we have this wonderful, wonderful building here today. Many of you know me as a longtime chancel choir director at Bethany Church, or I'm currently, for 5 years now, organist over at Messiah Church across the street. And what you may not know, about 10 years ago, I retired as vice president for advancement at McPherson College, and certainly knew a lot about Ken Shrugren and the work that he did at Bethany when I was a student here. But during my McPherson years, I was involved in 2 large and very successful capital campaigns. And in my retirement, I guess I can't quite leave fundraising alone. My first 2 years after leaving McPherson, I helped the Cedars raise $850,000 for a new memory care center. And more recently, McPherson USD 418 built a new stadium on the northeast corner of the McPherson High School property. and we had $1 million capital campaign for which I did a feasibility study, and they successfully completed that goal. More recently, and some of you have been involved in this, I worked with Bethany Church for 2 years, did a feasibility study, and I announced to the congregation that we had surpassed our capital campaign goal. We have commitments in the range of $1,218,500 as of December 31. Now, Jim Turner and I, and Vern, sitting back here, we gather quite frequently at the Peacock in the afternoon. And Jim and I were talking, and we also were talking with Ron about the possibility of a capital campaign. So I did a presentation for the foundation board, and originally the thought was that the gallery would take from its quasi-endowment from the foundation $500,000 to meet the third arm of fundraising for the building. And anyone who's been involved in advancement knows that when any not-for-profit starts dipping into an endowment fund like a savings account, you're jeopardizing the future of the institution. So in conversation with Ron, Jim and I agreed to chair a capital campaign, and we're doing right now what Ron refers to and I do as a feasibility study. Is it feasible to raise $500,000 from our constituency? We promised you that no one would be solicited for a gift tonight. However, we are going to ask you off of the top of your head to give us a number as to just what you think you might be able to contribute over a 3-year period to this project. It is not a pledge. It is not a commitment of any kind. You can change your mind later on, but we need to have some numbers to know if 500,000 is a realistic goal. No not-for-profit wants to have a failed campaign because constituents remember that forever. So the numbers may show we can increase the goal between 500,000 or maybe we'll have to reduce it, just depending on the information that we glean from our membership over 7 meetings and possibly an 8th. And I've got to, at this break in a moment, and say big thanks to Marilyn and Steve and Muriel and Fred. This is meeting number 4. This is the first one where no one has forgotten the meeting. Everyone we expected to come is here, and I think that's absolutely fabulous. And thank you, hosts, for your works in terms of making that possible. You're going to have a homework assignment, and which you can complete here. Shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes to complete. It's a questionnaire, and the first set of questions ask you, do you think the Sandzén Gallery is fulfilling its mission here in Linsport? What is your perception of this professional staff here at the gallery? And this information is helpful as Ron writes grants. We have very little data to draw upon. Something else they'll want to know, is our board supportive of this effort? Is the foundation board, as membership, are they willing to contribute to the project? Do you know of persons who have resources who may not be members of the gallery but have a passion for the visual arts and perhaps would be persons that we should seek out and see if we can garner their support? It asks you, would you be willing to support a capital campaign? And you could say yes, uncertain, no. And I also always say at these meetings, it is perfectly fine to say no. Any of us, it's not what we hope for, but any of us who are involved in long-term fundraising know that just because of circumstances, everyone is not always in a position. So this meeting is more than announcing information for a capital campaign, but we want to give you the opportunity to learn about the addition and how important it is for the gallery. And we would very much appreciate if you would give an estimate of what you think you might do over a 3-year period. And I've been asked at other meetings, okay, if I play a pledge out over a 3-year period, what are you gonna do when you have to pay the contractor? Well, what will happen is that the gallery will use foundation funds, and as commitments come in to the gallery over the next 3, maybe 4 years, those funds will be put back into the foundation, which will help guarantee the gallery's existence into perpetuity. Now, I quoted Carl Peterson to open, and those of you who know Carl, he would have said, I've rattled on long enough, and I probably have. But I would also be glad to entertain any questions that you might have. If not, your task is before you, and I'm going to turn it at this point to Muriel, who will has a few words to say, and then when you're all finished, you're welcome to go down into the basement and see the current storage space if you have not been down there. And want to let you know there's a freight elevator as well if anyone has a disability that makes the stairs challenging. So thank you for coming tonight, and thank you, Muriel.